On today's episode of the ThriveMore podcast, I have Maribeth Dodd, and you are really going to enjoy this. She is so genuine, so authentic, and just exudes joy. And she has some great stories that are examples of leadership principles versus just sharing, here's a leadership principle. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I think you will too. And you are going to find, like I did, there are some wonderful nuggets of wisdom in here. You may want to have a pen and paper handy because she says things and she just says them in passing, but they're so powerful. And I've had to rewind and go back and say, wait, talk about that, because she just really encapsulates some of the best leadership principles and just life principles in really simple terms. Enjoy. Hey, before we get started, just remember to punch that or smash that subscribe button if you have not already, so you're always up to speed with the latest and the greatest. Because you'll want to be, because on today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Maribeth Dodd. Maribeth is a creative, get-out-of-the-box instigator. We're going to talk about the word instigator, with 20 years of leadership and encouragement of people professionally. She's a speaker, a podcaster, an entrepreneur, and a business executive, and a coach with her business, Maribeth Dodd Consulting. And we'll talk about that business. She loves listening to, encouraging, and lighting a fire under people who want more from their lives. I think you're really going to enjoy this show. Maribeth, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thanks for having me, Roger. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I would love if you could, because I want to definitely dive into leadership, how we can get more out of our teams. I think especially in today's labor pool, it's all the more critical to get maximum productivity from the teams that we hire. But can you give the listeners and me a little bit, and I've certainly been on your website and LinkedIn and seen some of your background, but I would love just to hear it in your words, kind of, how you started and what got you to here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Spring Hill, Tennessee now with my husband and our 4 sons. I actually, if I back way up, I was an opera major in college, studied classical music, studied ministry. And the first part of my career was actually in vocational ministry as a worship pastor. And really got interested in the idea of business and jumped into the direct sales industry in 2011 with a health and wellness company. And just got a chance to see that I was kind of accidentally good at it, and I loved it. I found some quick success there. I loved helping people get healthier. I loved the chance just to get into people's lives in a really kind of more intimate way and begin to coach and see people grow and have success. And not just before it was success, maybe spiritually or personally for people, it became to be financial success as well. And I loved the concept of that. And so that was kind of the start of my business career. And I, as much as I loved building my own business, I also found out that I really excelled at helping other people build theirs. And so the direct sales company that I was with ended up hiring me to help with sales at the global level. Oh, wow. And so I was with them for about 11 years. I got to see the company grow from about 200 million to about 750 million. And just, the company was growing, but I was growing. I was learning so much, taking a lot in, during that season. And so absolutely loved my experience there, the people I got to work with and learn from. And then since early 2022, I've been doing my own consulting business and really getting to work with multiple companies. And I've done complete corporate turnarounds. I've gotten in and just helped people to build additional streams of revenue or, look at just lowering costs and making sales bigger and all kinds of incredible things, in addition to just coaching, individual coaching as well.
Yeah. It's funny. It doesn't surprise me if you were good at ministry, if you were good at getting people to open their minds up and maybe hear a message that they weren't ready to hear before, regardless of a person's belief system, that's persuasion and influence, right? For good. And selling and being great at sales and marketing, when you believe in what you're selling, it's really the similar skill set, right? A very similar skill set, I would think, in those two. So that's really not surprising. If you're really good, at ministry, you should be pretty good at helping people, find and make a better decision for their lives health-wise too, I would think.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, I definitely found that I was surprised how much I could move that skill set of really having to motivate and encourage volunteers from a leadership perspective, but exactly what you're saying, teach people something maybe they haven't heard before, inspire them with something, a message of truth, and then take that same skill set. And especially in direct sales or really in any company, you're also working with volunteers, whether you pay them or not. Like they don't have to be there, right? And so what are the ways we can motivate and encourage them to produce, but also to enjoy their experience while they're there? So,
we can't go forward until I ask about opera. Like you just threw that in and then you went right past it. But there's not a lot of people that really study that, and that's not what they then go on to do, right? So did you just decide to leave that behind? Is it still something you dabble in? Because that's a serious study, That's not a garage band.
It's not a garage band. Very true. And what's funny is when I look back, even at, where I grew up, like no one else was really studying that. It was just classical music was so interesting to me from a young age. And I'm kind of an achiever. And I found out that was really the way to study music, to study classically and really be able to dive into the foundational pieces of that and the nuts and the bolts. And so I think that really got me interested in it. And then, grew that and ended up in school. That was the kind of music that they had for us to study too. So it was interesting because I was learning contemporary music at the same time. So I was interning in that and using that in a more kind of modern, worship band style outside of school. But then in school, I was still learning classical music. And then honestly, I came to a crossroads where I had to decide, am I going to continue? I had a scholarship to continue in opera in a master's program, or I got an offer to take a ministry position. And that was really the fork in the road for me, where I felt like I'm supposed to step into this leadership position now. And that changed kind of the course of my life really at that point, right out of college. And so I'm not singing opera anymore. I sure enjoy hearing, a great voice, somebody who's really spent the time curating it because it's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's neat. That's a great story. So as you coach your clients now, you have clients, I'm sure individuals, you have companies. What are one or two things that you like to focus on with specifically new leaders? So someone is in a company, they get promoted into a leadership role and they've never been in a leadership role before, or somebody is starting a business. And we've seen this a lot in franchising, where somebody maybe was an individual contributor in corporate America, but then when they come to open their own business, they've got employees now. They have to lead and motivate and hire and fire and all that. So what is your advice or kind of the path you put specifically new leaders on?
There's a story that I often share when I'm talking with new leaders. And so I'll give you the short version, because it really leads into the foundation that I like to set for them. So I told you we have 4 sons. When we only had just 2 of them, I took them to the park one day when they were little. And I had, one was 2 years old. His name is Asher. And then I had an infant that I had kind of in the front carrier. And we go to the park to hang out, and I'm trying to burn off some energy with Asher, and I'm watching him just enough to make sure he's not getting kidnapped. Yeah. And that's about it, because I'm trying to deal with this infant at the same time, right? And all this time I was a mom, but I was also always a working mom too. So your brain's going in a million directions. Yeah. And so I'm watching him, and at one point I realized kind of how he was playing in that playground. And I wasn't paying attention to it before, but I zoomed into it and I realized he was running this entire operation in the playground. And he's 2, and he was really small for his age. He was completely bald, so he was like a little boss baby. Yeah. And, he's running around, and he has all the kids on this playground. There was probably 5 or 6 kids playing with him, moving sand from one side of the playground to the other side. And some of those kids came prepared to play with sand. So they had buckets and they had trucks and shovels, and some of them didn't. And so they were just taking their shirts and filling it up with sand, and just, he's getting them to do this thing, and he's just going, great job, you're doing it, and he's directing this whole thing at 2 years old. Huh. And I learned something about leadership that day. I learned that, he wasn't the most experienced person there. In fact, he was the youngest. Yeah. He wasn't maybe the most qualified because he wasn't the biggest, he was the smallest, and nobody gave him permission to lead. Nobody said, Asher, it's your turn today to step in and lead this playground activity. And he had an entire business running. He had a whole operation. Yeah. Because he just stepped in and he did it. And so I like to share that with new leaders, because I really believe that you don't have to wait for permission to lead right where you are, and that goes for going out and starting something new in business, but that's also for wherever you find yourself in a corporate role or whatever it is, like you can step up and you can lead right where you are. And so that's always the first thing that I share with people, Roger, that they don't need to wait for that. Nobody has to tell you permission. In fact, if you're waiting for it, I give it to you right now as you're listening. I give you permission to step in and just lead exactly where you are.
Yeah. I love to tell people on my team who are looking for more responsibility, don't wait for me to give it to you. Take it and do the role you want before you get offered that role. For decades now, I've said it should be so evident to the rest of the team when a person gets promoted that they go, well, yeah, of course. Like, of course it's her. Of course it's him, because they've done that role. And I love that. You've said it in a different way, though. I'm going to steal that. I love that. Don't wait for permission to do that. That's outstanding. Yes. The flip side of the coin to that question is, what are one or two things that you see more seasoned leaders needing to be, let's say it politically correctly, what do they need to be reminded of? More seasoned leaders, not what they're doing wrong. What do they need to be reminded of that you found?
I would just say intentionality in what they're doing. And as simple as that sounds, I think as we get seasoned in leadership, we're like, yeah, I've done this before. I've been doing this. I'm just going to keep doing this the way that I've always done it. And I think we lose that intention that we probably started with.
Yeah.
And just the desire to really get out there and do it. I think, I come across CEOs that will say, I just can't get anybody to care about things the way that I care about them. And my first thing to them is like, well, how much are you caring for these people? Are you intentionally investing in and caring for and leading and doing a great job managing the bits and the pieces and the people that are entrusted to you? Because if you're not, they know it and they're not going to care about it. And they're not going to, produce what you want them to produce. And it's not going to be the culture you want it to be if you stop being intentional with casting that vision and really pouring into and caring for your people. I really believe, Roger, that if you grow incredible people, you can grow an incredible business. And I think if we stick with that our entire careers, I think we're in really good shape.
That's well said. So my experience has been, especially this is more from corporate America, I see different idiosyncrasies with entrepreneurs, but in corporate America, it always surprised me the level of ego and the inability to accept failure and say, okay, I'm going to learn from this, because you got put in a box in corporate America if you failed. So how have you worked with these CEOs who have been positively reinforced? I always joked, like, we get promoted, which is a positive reinforcement for kind of negative behavior, right? Shifting blame and staying out of the firing line and all that, which is, I would say is avoidance and not positive behavior, but you get positively rewarded for that behavior a lot of times in corporate America. So how have you worked with these CEOs, C-level, even maybe VPs that are like, I'm doing pretty darn well. Like, my career is doing well, so I don't want to change what I'm doing, but darn well they could excel so much higher. How do you approach that? And I guess, my long-winded question really was, how do you approach these leaders who do have a pretty big ego, but that they can do better than they're doing?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is whether or not they're open to those conversations. And I have worked with some incredible CEOs. One instance comes to mind where the guy said to me, we had a meeting with his team. The meeting didn't go well. It was just really tense, and it just you could just feel it in the room,
Yeah.
And following the meeting, he's like, I can tell that, something wasn't right there. Coach me, tell me what we could have done differently. And in those moments, it's like gold, because it's like the humility of that person who's the top dog. They're in leadership. He owned the company.
Yeah.
And yet he's willing and open to hear that feedback. And I'm able to say, okay, here's what I think we could have changed. And when there isn't that openness, which I would say most of the time, there probably isn't that level of openness at that level. But when there isn't that, it's so hard to speak into it. And even when I do speak into it, because I find myself, like, lots of times I end up being sort of the conscience in the room or in the organization, And so it's like they have to be willing to hear, A, what's hard, and B, what's maybe not their favorite thing that they want to do. Because exactly what you said, they got to where they are. Some of the people say in a VP level position, they got there by, avoiding some conflict and maybe not speaking up about some stuff that wasn't quite right. And trying to make sure that they looked better than somebody else who was up for the promotion. And those things are real and they're happening all around us. And I think it's always a good balance of how do I sort of stay in the game and also keep integrity and try to be a great leader where I am. And I think ultimately when you do those things, sometimes it might take you longer, I don't know, to get to the top. However, when you get there, you're so well respected. People want to stay with you. They're loyal to you. And I think those around you are seeing it too. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that was great. Thank you. That was great. Hey, everyone. As you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. You've gone from having your own business and then working for the business that you were selling for and being an employee, a W-2 employee, to now going back and starting your own coaching and consulting practice. What have you found to be, especially in 2022, 2023, as we record this show, what have you found to be the most challenging aspect of starting and running your own shop?
I think it's the mindset shift. I think in that season where I was a W-2 employee, there's a part of your mind that doesn't have to think about selling for yourself, selling your own thing, selling your own business. And I feel like in the season when I was W-2, it was like, you can kind of just settle in a little bit. Now I was hustling and working really hard for that company and wanting their sales to grow. And of course, I'm benefited too when sales grow for a company. But there's that part, you're missing that sort of risk piece, And so I think I'm kind of in the best of both worlds now, as far as challenging myself to risk and to get out there and do something scary. As far as just having to, nobody's here to catch me, it's me. So I'm the one making sure that I'm out there and investing and showing people my value. But also it gives you the chance to be the person that's still doing the work and with the people and growing things. And so, but I mean, the challenge is like, you got to get up every day and remember like, hey, I said I wanted this. And so I'm going to do those actions, that are going to take me there. And I'm going to give an example from you, Roger, because I watched a video that you put out recently where you talked about, inspiration has to turn into discipline, and discipline is what builds dynasties, and it's what creates habits, and habits are what become your destiny. And I think, I'm somebody who loves to get out and just like inspire. Let's get people to get excited and to go run after things. But the part I have to be very intentional about is, okay, what are the habits that I have to backtrack and do to make sure I can keep doing that? And then when somebody's sitting under my leadership, I can't just get them excited in a meeting to head out and do their job. I have to follow up. I have to do those little mundane things that are going to equal up to, building that really cool organization.
As an entrepreneur, no one tells you got to get out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. No one tells you that. Like you just have to do it, and we kind of joke, no one is coming to save you. This is all up to you. There is no one coming to save. There's no cavalry on the way. This is you. You have a leadership course called Bullet Point Leadership. Can you talk about that and specifically how that supports your clients and their journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I created this leadership course because, I'm somebody who obsesses over self-leadership or, reading the books and doing the things. And not everybody is that excited about hearing a podcast or listening to an audiobook or going to a conference. Some people are, but they just don't have time to do it, And so I realized that, and I thought, when I'm for years, when I've been talking to my team and they're trying to describe an issue or a problem, or they want to talk about something. If we don't have a whole lot of time, I say, okay, give me the most important bullet points of what I need to know so that we can assess the issue and we can, start to put some solutions in place. And so I created the course really to give people the most important bullet points of leadership. So I took my career of leading, over 20 years across different avenues. And I said, okay, what are the most important things? If I had to know them about leadership and somebody needed a quick catch up on leadership, what are those things? And so I put that into my course so that people can spend really about no more than 6 hours kind of going through and watching, listening, taking notes. And they get some really good foundations of leadership. And so that's what it was created for. So I've used it for, my masterminds as a part of that. And then I've had lots of groups use it kind of with their teams within the corporate world as well.
Super cool. I love bullet point. I'm such a fan of, give me the 30-second version. I just give me the 30. I also, one of my mantras is, and I got taught this, but somebody taught me this, but the mantra is, it's a number, not a story. And I learned that because someone would ask me, how I played. I haven't played golf in years, but when I used to play a lot in my 20s, how was your round? Well, on the second hole, blah, blah, and they would this one guy finally stopped me. He goes, it's a number, not a story. Just give me the bullet points. Just give me the bullet points.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. You can steal that one. You can steal that one.
I'm going to.
Some questions here to kind of round out the interview. So I'm an avid reader, and my listeners know that. You said it. You said it earlier. Some people don't have the time for podcasts, or they don't like to read. That's just not their forum. So whether it's a book on tape or it's an actual physical book that you've read, and my qualifiers always can't be a religious text. That's too easy. What is one of or the book that had the most impact on you, that maybe even changed the directory of how you think, how you present to people, and who you are as a person? Is there one book you can think of?
There's so many, but the one that comes to mind as far as just changing the way that I think, about leadership is a book called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by Clay Scroggins. And it really is about kind of being a number two in leadership and what it looks like, to really come under and support a top leader and lead right where you are. And so I think it's good for any listener as well who is really, maybe they're middle management and they want to figure out what we're talking about here. What does it look like to lead where I am, which sometimes means leading down, and sometimes that means leading up. I mean, I figured that out years ago. I was like, I could actually lead up. If I don't like what my supervisor is doing or how they're doing it, why don't I be a great example to them so that they can also lead, or learn how I'm leading below them in a way that's still respectful and honoring. I think that helped to lay foundation for me to be able to step into consulting roles where it's like, I'm not the one leading this company, but I really can help you from this position to grow and to do better.
Just, if you will, say the name of the title of the book and the author again, because we'll put that in the show notes, actually.
Oh, perfect. Yep. It's How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by Clay Scroggins.
Clay Scroggins. Cool. I've not heard of that one. That seems like a wonderful book, because there's only so many CEOs, and so many leadership books are, well, if you're the top dog, you can drive culture down and all that. Well, a lot of people aren't, and you have to affect change from in the middle of the organization. So great recommendation. I want to go back just a half a step. And you talked about starting your own business and what that feels like. What advice would you give? We have a lot of listeners who are thinking about starting their own business, thinking about buying a franchise, thinking about starting a coaching practice, whatever it may be, their specific skill set, their God-given skill set, and they want to monetize that, but they have fear. There's fear of making that choice. Just, as a coach, but also as someone who's walked this road, what advice would you give to those listeners?
I would say, if nothing changes, nothing changes. First of all, and in the current climate, in the world that we live in, I don't think we have the luxury of just kind of staying where we are. We just don't. We need that extra stream of income. We need that residual income that comes, from a franchise or an opportunity where you can build something that's going to continue to pay you over time. And, my question for that person is, why not you? Like, I don't know, but many of you, if you're like me, you look at situations and you're like, wait a minute, that person could do that. If they could do it, maybe I could do it too. Like, that seems crazy. And I really think that it's a matter of just taking that step, just to refer back to my story in the beginning with my son, Asher. He's incredibly intelligent, but he wants to be an entrepreneur. He's 16 years old. He has all these business ideas and all these things he wants to do. And I'm walking with my husband the other day, and he said, honey, what if he's not smart enough to do all the things we think he says he wants to do? Yeah. And I said, maybe he's not. But I said, hopefully he's dumb enough to have the courage to do it anyway. You know
I
what I'm
love
saying?
that.
Like, just get it. I want him and I love it. I'm inspired by him. Nothing gets in his way. He's
Yeah.
just still to this. He's 16. He was 2 in the earlier story. He's not scared of anything. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He just runs after it and he goes after it. And I want to be like that in my life, because I really think, like, what's the worst that can happen? I think we got to ask ourselves that sometimes too. And then leave that and go focus on what's the best that can happen. What's the best case scenario? And we point ourselves in that direction and we just go after it.
You just said something that reminded me of another quote where we focus on, what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? And I forgot who, maybe I think it was Mel Robbins. She goes, what if it all goes right? You know, have you ever thought to dream, and if you're going to, ruminate on something, ruminate on what if it all goes right? But we're not trying. And I love that your story that you bridged from when he's 2 to 16. When we're 2, we have all the confidence in the world. We believe in ourselves. The world's all new. And then society, parents, teachers, slowly but surely tell us what we can't do. And for the rest of our lives, we're told what we can't do and what we shouldn't do. And don't take that risk and don't try, but it's a 2-year-old is beautiful because he or she's like, I can do whatever, there's no limits. There's no limits, and that's a beautiful story that he's stayed with that. And that's great parenting. You take a lot of credit for that. That's great parenting that he's 16 and still doesn't have all those limiting beliefs and fears that are really they're irrational. But we all have them. So good for him. I'm rooting for him. That's great. Yeah.
So keep posted.
Yeah. A couple last questions, and these are a little bit different, but I think it helps you elaborate on your story, but also helps the listeners really understand who you are. If we were to fast forward to the end of your life, which hopefully is a long, long, long time from now, but it is at your funeral and somebody is reading your eulogy, how do you want to be remembered? What would you like the person that's reading your eulogy to say about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, first and foremost, as a Christ follower, that I would want them to say that I kept my eyes on that, on what I believe is important. And I would love for them to say that I'm somebody who's loved and invested in people, and just done so to a sacrificial degree. But also someone who's been willing to run after difficult things, and show others how to do that. I have a big passion to help people who, just like we're talking about, are nervous about having the courage to take that next step, to be able to just do it, to be able to take that risk, and walk through seasons of failure and still get to the other side of those seasons and feel good about it just because they did it. They invested and they tried. And then, of course, ultimately hope that those that know me, that are closest to me, love me the most. I think that's a big deal. When the people who love us the most are the people who see us from a stage, that's not great. But what is great is when people get closer to us and they know us, on a more regular, everyday basis, when they have love and respect for us and the way that we do our lives. I think that is the ultimate. So that is what I would want, that people would see me as somebody who is a woman of integrity through and through, who lived out her values and finished strong.
Wow. That was really powerful, what you said about being loved from a stage, while you're on stage, because that's not real. It's not real, but wow, in this day and age, we chase it. We chase it. Yeah. And the younger generations really chase it. So that's beautiful. Not really related, but still from your heart. If you had a magic wand and you could wave this magic wand and make one material change in the world, how would the world be different according to Maribeth? How would the world be different?
Oh my goodness, that's a good one. One material change. I mean, one material change, I would say that no one's going hungry. I think that's a really big one for me, and just getting to support different ministries and missions over the years. And I have a brother who works for humanitarian aid with the U.S. government and works out of Ethiopia. And so just the stories, the things that I've been able to see through his eyes and through the eyes of other people that we've supported over the years, that would be the one thing. I think that even, when we want to love and encourage people, we got to first meet their physical needs. And so that would be huge.
Yeah. No, I think in today's age, we would agree that if it's out of sight, unfortunately, a lot of times it's out of mind. And we live, the best country in the world, and with all its issues, it's still the best country in the world. But we don't see the poverty. We don't see the fact that there's not clean drinking water. That's just out of sight, out of mind. But you're right. So another great answer. Another great answer. All right. So I would share with the audience, if Maribeth has dropped just some amazing nuggets. So if you've gotten value out of this, that is wonderful. What's more powerful even is if you think there's a friend or family member that would benefit from Maribeth's knowledge and just some of this wisdom she shared, please share this podcast. Share it. That's how the podcast grows. But more importantly, that's how we help people improve their lives. So with that being said, Maribeth, where can people find you? How can they follow you? How can they get in touch with you? And we'll put that in the show notes as well. But how would they connect with you and follow you?
Perfect. So the best way is to just reach out to me through my website, maribethdodd.com, or in any social platform at Maribeth Dodd. And just to reach out if you're looking for a second pair of eyes for your business, individual coaching, speaking, corporate turnaround, all kinds of stuff that I'm involved in. But yeah, I would love to connect. And I love, honestly, just connecting to and getting to hear other people's stories and what's happening for them. So yeah, reach out.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. And I think when we were off air before we started, I said, hey, let's just have a genuine and authentic conversation. And that is certainly what it felt like to me. So I really appreciate you and very grateful for you for taking the time and sharing your wisdom.
Yes. Thank you so much, Roger. I enjoyed it too.
Very welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.